Recording's good? Okay. Thank you all. Appreciate you all coming out. My name is Phil Boyle, and I'm the senior planner here with the town of Corte Madera. And to my left is Sean Kennings, who's a planning consultant, helping us out on this project. So I really appreciate you all coming out this evening. A lot of the handouts have been picked up, but don't worry. Everything back there is or will be on our website. So feel free to go to the town's website, and there's a cannabis ordinance page committed directly to this ordinance in this process. So all information is on there. There's also, we just made more copies of a single sheet that has about 5 or 6 links to various information sources regarding cannabis in California and the local area. So feel free to take a look at those, and also take my card. If you have any questions, shoot me an email or give me a phone call. I can help you out with any of this information. I'm glad we have a good turnout, more people coming in. So I wanted to, also wanted to introduce Adam Wolf, our Director of Planning and Building here with the town, and also Mike Norton, our Chief of Police. So this is an informational session. We want to provide information to you folks, and we want to hear your feedback and get your opinions on how the town should move forward in adopting a cannabis ordinance. And just to give you a brief history, the citizens of California voted to legalize cannabis, and the state of California has imposed certain restrictions on municipalities. And each municipality has certain freedoms to customize the limitations of cannabis businesses within their municipality. And so that's the kind of the big picture, and we'll go into a little bit more detail of each one of those steps. Steps that we have taken, well, I won't, we've got a slide for that one. So I won't jump too far ahead. There is a sign-up sheet in the back. Please fill in your name and information, and email or phone number, whatever's the best way to contact you, and we'll give you any future updates and future events. In case you want to come back Saturday, you're more than welcome to, but it's going to be the same show, so not really necessary, but it will be here, and it'll be at from 10 a.m. to noon. So tell your friends. Pardon me? Yes, and this is being recorded, both audio and visual. Let's see, what else did handout emails. In terms of the survey, if you've gone on our website, you may have seen we're doing a public opinion survey. Feel free to fill that out. We've gotten a lot of responses already, and look forward to getting more. If for whatever reason you don't want to do it electronically, I have hard copies back there. You can check the boxes and fill in however you want, and give that to me, and we'll make sure your opinions are recorded. Again, this is an informational discussion workshop. No decisions are going to be made. This isn't a workshop on for or against cannabis. It's on information about cannabis. And with that, I will launch into. I'm going to do the first half of the PowerPoint presentation, then we'll stop for a little bit for questions, and then hand it over to Sean. We'll do the second half, and then we'll have time for questions and answers after that, and with the goal of getting you all out of here by 8 o'clock at the latest. All right. Any questions before I begin, just to start things off?
I do.
Okay.
Do you know what the endocannabinoid system is?
I don't.
I'm just curious.
No.
I feel like anybody, I just feel like that's a big thing.
I don't, I think that your agenda's being hijacked.
I just wanted to know, before we started, I was curious if you knew personally.
I don't know the details of that, but I could certainly look into it and get back to you.
Anybody who does just raise their hand.
That's-
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So, beginning. It's always fun. There we go. So just a brief, overall agenda for this evening. Providing some background, talk about some of the local issues. Again, talk about our public survey a little bit more. questions and answers and public comment, like I went through already. Given a brief history of Sorry about that. We're going backwards. Okay. Just some basic background on Cannabis 101, some definitions. The definition of cannabis itself, which is the plant, the entire plant, an Asian herb, has tough fibrous material, is often separated into tall or loosely branched species. There's different types of species of cannabis. Again, I'm not going to go into the real details of it, just give kind of an overview of cannabis. And then secondly, the common term is marijuana, for is the dry leaves and the flowers and the various parts of the plant that people consume for and use. The extracts from the plant can be made into hash, oil, or wax, and cannabis products contain the mind-altering chemical THC, which gives you the effect of consuming cannabis, or consuming marijuana. There's just a basic definition of THC, which is the main psychoactive ingredient from the female unpollinated plants. There are, as many of you probably aware, there are edibles and there are infusions, ways to consume cannabis through drinking and through eating. Next is we're using the term medicinal cannabis and non-medicinal cannabis. Just there's a number of different terms, but I think it's easier just to kind of stick with that. That seems to be the more common nomenclature to use. So medicinal cannabis refers to using the whole or unprocessed cannabis plant or its basic extracts to treat symptoms of illness and other conditions. And just to note that the U.S. Food and Drug Administration has not recognized or approved the cannabis plant as medicine. And then kind of reiterating that, cannabis is still considered a federal Schedule I drug.
That they have a patent on, sorry.
It is a controlled substance due to the Controlled Substance Act of 1970. And again, still listed as a Schedule I drug, which in some other common Scheduled I drugs are heroin, LSD, and others. So a little bit of the laws that have been approved in California over the years. Back in the late 90s, we had Prop 215, which is the Compassionate Use Act, which legalized medicinal cannabis in California. Is that one off, or?
No, it's working. This is for public comment or questions.
Okay, thank you. So Prop 215 was back in the late 90s. 2003, we had SB 420, which was called the Medical Marijuana Program Act, which protects medical cannabis cardholders and cooperatives. And then 2016, we had the Medicinal Cannabis Regulation and Safety Act, or MCRSA, which established regulations and standards and testing and licensing for medicinal cannabis. And then moving on, again in 2016, we had Prop 64, which is the Adult Use of Marijuana Act, which legalized recreational use for adults over the age of 21 in California, 21 and older. And then finally, just last year in 2017, we had SB 94, Senate Bill 94, which combined medicinal or I have it more detail down below. It basically, it was entitled the Medicinal and Adult Use Cannabis Regulation and Safety Act, which I have a little bit more, just jumping ahead to my slide, a little bit more information on that act, which legalized adult non-medicinal use of cannabis. It does not change the local government's ability to regulate and or tax medicinal or non-medicinal cannabis. And so that's what we're more or less the process we're doing now is what our local government wants to do in terms of regulating cannabis. This act established that in January 1st of this year, The state allowed non-medicinal businesses activities to be licensed if local jurisdictions allow, which Corte Madera did not allow, and we put a prohibition and a moratorium on cannabis-related businesses, and that moratorium currently exists. We've extended it twice, and that moratorium will continue until September of 2019. Unless we implement an ordinance, which we're scheduled to do, which will modify that and will change, could change that prohibition and that moratorium.
Have you already decided that?
No, we have not.
Because
No,
you just
that's-
said that.
Yeah, it was actually written up that it was decided.
Yes, it was written up.
Yeah, can we hold the questions for after? Thank you,
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Well, what you just said
So,
conflicts with what
hang
was in
on.
the newspaper. And I think a couple of people are trying to point that out.
Okay, I'm sorry, say again?
What you just said was different than what was reported in the newspaper in the Marin IJ.
Okay, I apologize if I misspoke. I just want to make clear that there was, we enacted a moratorium on cannabis-related businesses within the town of Corte Madera. So cannabis-related businesses are not allowed in Corte Madera today. The only thing that is allowed is delivery from an outside jurisdiction into Corte Madera. Now we're going through, so we're kind of basically on hold. And now we're going through this process, first the public information process, determining what ordinances and what regulations the town of Corte Madera would like to have in our jurisdiction. And we have until September 2019 to do that, or we fall back and we have to abide by the state rules. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Yes,
they
it
said
does.
that you voted on it last night.
We voted on it last night. No, we did not.
Well, I'm just letting, that's what the newspaper.
That is what it says. It says
Oh, I haven't read the newspaper article, and so I'm sorry, I can't wait, hang on one second, folks. I can't speak directly to that, but I can take a look at it and get back to you, okay? So, let me continue, please. So this SB 94 also reconciled MCRSA with AUMA, which is Prop 64. So it just reconciled those two pieces of legislation. SB 94 also established restrictions for where one can smoke cannabis, processing cannabis for personal use, and growing and giving away cannabis. So those are all the items that came into SB 94. And again, just going to want to back up, neither myself nor Sean claim to be experts in this field. It's a learning process for us. We're here to provide as much information as we can, give you many resources as we can. And again, this is the very, very beginning of the process. This will be, we'll have 2 public workshops. We'll have hearings before the Planning Commission. We'll have hearings before the Town Council. So, just to give you an idea of, this is kind of the administrative structure of SB 94. There's the Bureau of Cannabis Control, California entity. There's the California Department of Food and Agriculture, and there's the California Department of Public Health. All these are state entities that are responsible for the cannabis in California and the various regulations listed below, whether it's retailers or microbusinesses, cultivators, and manufacturers. A lot of the information on our handout is from one or both of these entities. So the authority of the local government, or the authority of the town of Corte Madera, if the town chooses, we have the ability to put certain restrictions on cannabis. Other than personal consumption, which we cannot regulate except for the location of where one can personally consume cannabis, the town has the authority to prohibit medicinal and non-medicinal cannabis businesses, which we have done, which we've put a hold on. Determine location of businesses and zoning requirements if we do decide to have businesses. Determine the type of license and permit, whether that's a use permit, special cannabis, annual licenses, or taxes, or other things. Again, taxation, sales tax, use tax are available, retail, cultivation, many different types of taxes and fees that a local government can impose upon the business. So again, kind of reiterating what I said, this is what we've done. In response to Prop 64, the state proposition, the town adopted an urgency ordinance, number 971. This established a temporary prohibition on medicinal and non-medicinal cannabis-related businesses from operating in the town. Like I said, that ordinance has been extended and is due to expire on September 19th, 2019, so roughly a year from now. Prior to the expiration of the ordinance, the town will develop its own regulations for cannabis businesses and personal cultivation. So currently allowed in Corte Madera under the rules of the state of California are one can consume cannabis if one is 21 years of age or older, unless for medical purposes. You can be younger than that for medical reasons. Possession, one may possess, process, transport, purchase, or obtain or give away 28.5 grams, or about an ounce, of non-concentrated non-medicinal cannabis, or 8 grams of concentrated cannabis products, and one can possess various accessories. In terms of cultivating or growing, an individual, again, over 21 years of age, may possess, plant, cultivate, harvest, dry, or process up to 6 plants per residence or property for personal use. And I believe it's as many as 10 plants if you have a medicinal cannabis card. Residents may possess the cannabis produced by the plants, and they may grow these plants within the private residence or on private property. They must be in a locked space and not visible by normal unaided vision from a public place. So those are the regulations regarding cultivation. What's not allowed in Corte Madera is consuming cannabis in a public place, consuming it in a vehicle, or driving under the influence. Smoking or vaping cannabis anywhere smoking of tobacco is prohibited per the town code. Providing cannabis to minors under the age of 21 for non-medicinal use. And also, employers may maintain drug-free workplaces, and they can have certain restrictions regarding consuming cannabis in the workplace, much like I believe businesses can do with smoking of tobacco. No smoking of cannabis or vaping of cannabis is allowed within 1,000 feet of a school, daycare center, or youth center. Commercial uses that are prohibited at this time in Corte Madera, again, are cannabis-related uses such as dispensaries, commercial cultivation. Except medicinal and non-medicinal cannabis delivery is allowed by the state and is allowed by the town of Corte Madera. You're not allowed to possess over the allowed limits, and possessions on the grounds, and you're not allowed to have possession of cannabis on grounds of a school, daycare, or youth center when kids are present. So that kind of wraps up my part of the presentation. I think I'll go ahead and hand it over. Oh, actually, I'll go ahead, since I did say we'd do questions. Let's contain the questions just to my presentation, if you would. If anybody has any, if you want me to go back to a particular slide or anything on what I presented, I will entertain those now. Yes, ma'am.
Ordinance is online, all of this is.
Yes, the Corte Madera ordinance.
Mhm.
Yes, it is.
All right.
Yeah.
This
Yes,
apply
ma'am.
to the Twin Cities, Larkspur as well?
No, each municipality has its own rules and regulations.
Okay.
Each one of those is, of course, regulated by the state of California. But I know Larkspur and San Anselmo are going through a similar process as list or have. And we have a slide actually that gives an update of where those two jurisdictions are.
Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a copy of the state regs?
Copy of the state regulations. I don't physically have them with me, but they will be on our website. And if you want to leave me your email or put it on my card, I can send them to you directly.
As part of the preparation of it,
No, we're not going to be looking through the state. I have them here, but we're not going to be looking through the state regulations this evening, no.
No, I'm not. In conjunction with preparing any kind of ordinance, would you be looking at, would you be looking at parts of the state right?
Absolutely. Yep. Yes, Bob?
Are Larkspur and San Anselmo is working with Central Marin Police and Chief Norton to have potentially similar ordinances so that enforcement is much easier?
Sorry about that. Thank you. Do need the microphone. Thank you, Adam.
So my question was,
Uh-huh.
are Larkspur and San Anselmo also looking at, with Corte Madera to craft similar ordinances so the Central Marin Police will have just one ordinance to deal with for all three towns since they're the police force for all three towns?
We have Chief Norton here. He can speak to that directly.
The quick answer is there's really only one ordinance, the social host ordinance, that's uniform throughout towns. It's in a perfect world, ordinances are the same, but everything from leaf blowers to noise ordinances can get very personal from community to community, and we're not requesting there be any sort of uniformity, and we'll be able to handle, and we understand that the three communities are very different, so we're okay with different codes on this.
And we're going to get into that a little bit about some of the other jurisdictions, but right now San Anselmo has their own ordinance, and it has very specific allowances for deliveries and businesses and outdoor cultivation. So that actually is an example that we can use if people are interested at their whole process, what they went through, and what's allowed under their ordinance. But as of right now, so they've already enacted theirs. So as of right now, we'd be sort of following suit.
Okay, if there's no other questions on my slides, yes. Thanks. Adam's doing a great job on microphone. Thank you, Adam.
I'm aware that Citrus Heights, a community up, I believe, near Sacramento, has enacted a whole bunch of ordinances already approved and apparently working. And I wondered if you have researched any of those, and if not, would you please?
Absolutely. Citrus Heights, right, outside of Sacramento. I'm familiar with it. We'll do that. All right, any other questions? Okay, hand it over to Sean.
All right, so Phil gave you sort of the background, where we are to date, the history of SB 94, and where we are with the state regs, and where Corte Madera is today. And so the next sort of step, what we are trying to achieve with this ordinance is what does the town, what do people in the community want to see either allowed or disallowed or prohibited in their community? So, what you're talking about, Citrus Heights, a lot of the information we've collected to date has been about some of the other communities here in Marin County. And there is a lot of information through some of the other municipalities, namely the County of Marin, the City of San Rafael, Sausalito, Novato, and San Anselmo, and Fairfax as well. So some of the other communities definitely have gone through this process already. So there's a lot of information, but we will look at Citrus Heights as you requested.
Are we gonna be able to vote on this?
So there's no action tonight. This is just absolutely the purpose of these workshops is to accumulate sort of the public's interest, public's concerns. That's the purpose of the public survey that we've published. Ultimately, it's the Planning Commission and then the Town Council who will approve.
Without a voter approval?
Well, that is the vote. So again, the state law has allowed it, and it's up to the local jurisdiction to come up with their own ordinance. So that's this process is. Your input is intended to guide your city decision makers so that they make an ordinance that the people wants. So why don't we leave the question? Why don't we leave the questions to the end of the presentation, because this is part of the discourse. Obviously, we want to incorporate all your public comment, but we're sort of trying to get through the meat of it first before we start having this discussion. So again. The types of potential cannabis activities for consideration. Cultivation, that's the growing of plants, so whether or not you want indoor or outdoor. Again, the state law allows for indoor growing, and you cannot prohibit that. Whether or not you want to have medicinal licenses or medicinal recreational licenses, that's a dispensary, that's a storefront, or delivery services, which is a non-storefront. So effectively, somebody would have a license to deliver product. They would be based in Corte Madera, but they wouldn't have a walk-up storefront. Also, there are licenses for manufacturing and testing. That would be obviously the production or the testing of that of cannabis products. That could be the leaf product. That could be oils and extracts. That could be purposes for medicinal uses. That would be a non-storefront as well, but it would be a facility or business in town. And then there are other licenses, microbusinesses, which are they have three of the basic parameters. That's either cultivation, that's manufacturing, that's delivery, that's testing, or distribution, which is not delivery, but the actual transportation of cannabis products to and from various, whether retail stores or manufacturing stores or storage. And all these types of licenses, you would need a state license from the state board, and then you would also need one locally. So if you have a state license and the town prohibits it, you cannot have a license to operate in the town. So really quickly, personal cultivation. As we mentioned, the town cannot prohibit personal indoor cultivation, and that's 6 plants. That's indoors. That's indoors on a private residence, so it's not per person, but it would be either in your primary residence or in a greenhouse or in somewhere where it's locked, not visible from the public. Indoor cultivation includes growing in a greenhouse, another structure on the parcel of property, and not visible from a public space. Now, the town can reasonably regulate indoor cultivation, and that would be whether or not to assign licensing or code restrictions. And again, the town can regulate outdoor cultivation, and the same sort of basic parameters about how many plants would apply. Now, outdoor cultivation would require sort of basic standards for either setbacks, visual aspects, and odor aspects. And we sort of have discussed it similar to like what keeping of chickens would be like, whether or not is it a public nuisance, is it smell bad, is it visible to children, is it visible from public spaces? Those would be kind of the things that we'd have to think about if we wanted to regulate outdoor cultivation. The potential regulations for indoor cultivation, where we said we could reasonably regulate, and that comes down to things like having fire code or building code issues, and that could be the type of equipment used, areas in which you can have a greenhouse or a grow, whether or not indoor cultivation provides odors. Again, is it visible from public spaces? Would you have to allow for a license, but keep it in a room where it couldn't be seen, that kind of thing. And again, would the town then be issuing a residential permit on top of what's allowed by the state to grow indoors, and that.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I would really appreciate it if my fellow attendees in the audience would not issue comments while you are trying to.
Yes,
It's
please.
very disruptive.
Yes, please.
So it's just a general note, if everyone can be quiet until the end of the presentation, and we'll go on from there. So again, whether or not the potential regulations for indoor grows, how does the town sort of govern whether or not we need to administer permits for that, even though it's already allowed by the state? So moving on to sort of the more sort of like the business aspect of it, there are 19 different types of licenses, whether it's a cultivation license, there's various sizes and types, or whether it's a business type license where it's manufacturing, testing, retail. And again, retail is storefront, non-storefront being sort of more the delivery aspect. The distributor, again, is the transport to and from. And then the microbusiness, which is sort of a almost like an operation. You would be able to cultivate, distribute, manufacture, retail, all in one specific facility. As you may know, dispensaries is a storefront-like location. These are just some images. Obviously, it's sort of a more upscale kind of a condition than in the past. It would be somewhere where you'd actually go and purchase your medical or recreation cannabis. You'd have to have a state license, one of the 19 that I just showed you, and then a discussion of whether or not the town itself would administer a second license. So you'd have to have a state license and a town license if allowed. Again, if the town prohibits it and they have a state license, they still can't have a storefront here. Again, this would have to be a certain distance away from youth centers, schools, not home daycare centers, but youth centers and children. And that's typically 600 feet, although if the town were to allow for the retail permit, you can enforce a greater buffer from schools and youth centers if that's the decision. Most of these facilities have some sort of security, like a register or a doorman. One of the interesting things about the dispensaries now in the state law is they're not allowed to use the banking system, so there's a lot of a cash operation. So they tend to have a lot of cash on site, and like other businesses, they cash out every day and take it somewhere. But because they're not allowed to use banks, it's only a cash operation in these facilities. The town could regulate what those facilities look like, so the outdoor, the signage, and as you can see in this picture, this is a facility down in San Diego, and it doesn't look like anything that's sort of advertising marijuana or cannabis sales. So the town can regulate the appearances. And then also the town could regulate whether or not you can use those products, cannabis products, in a facility like this, in a retail store, whether or not the license to sell and actually consume cannabis products on site. And here's a quick slide. We were talking about some of the other jurisdictions. So the only sort of storefront dispensary in Marin County is in Fairfax, and that's a medicinal dispensary that's had a license for quite some time. In fact, the county of Marin has just gone through a process to allow delivery licenses. San Rafael allows limited testing facilities, and so does Novato. You can see there in the slide, though, most of the jurisdictions prohibit dispensaries, retail facilities, walk-up storefronts. And then on the right, you can see that some of the communities actually regulate outdoor growing. And San Anselmo does, in fact, allow outdoor growing per the MAU CRSA Act. And again, theirs is kind of tailored to that sort of keeping of chickens type thing, where it's odor, it's setbacks, it's sort of a general sort of proximity to public spaces. So delivery, when we talk about delivery, we're talking about retail, we're talking about non-storefront. It's the commercial transfer of cannabis or cannabis products to the customer. It also includes use by a retailer of any technology platform owned or controlled by that retailer. Only licensed operations can deliver cannabis, and delivery must be to a physical address. So again, the consideration here is will we be looking at allowing delivery license, retail licenses for people to operate a business in Corte Madera and to be able to deliver to the town and outside the town? Now again, the state doesn't. The state allows delivery into the town and through the town. You cannot prohibit other delivery options from driving on town streets, and the state regulations are changing And I believe that sometime later this fall, there's going to be a state law that basically you cannot prohibit deliveries into the town because, in a sense, it's not like a pizza delivery where you have a big, roof sign on your car that says, hey, I'm the cannabis delivery guy, and it's probably unmarked vehicles, and it'd be quite difficult, I think, to monitor those vehicles going through the town. And again, if the town allows these retail delivery business licenses, do we want to tax those businesses on top of the state taxes? And we didn't talk about taxes tonight. That's sort of a bigger concept. I think we're sort of trying to just educate people as to what's out there. And just so for comparison's sakes, there's over 20 businesses in Marin County that offer a delivery service, and you can see them. They're all sort of distributed throughout the county. Processing testing facilities. The building on top is in Novato. The building on the bottom is in Berkeley. As you can see, there's no sort of discernible marquee or signage that makes you think it's anything but a sort of a commercial or a industrial building. And so the question again is, do people in town want to regulate, prohibit, or allow testing and manufacturing? And again, testing and manufacturing, there's very strict guidelines for the type of cannabis products you can produce under the state law. And so these testing facilities, manufacturing facilities are figuring out how these products can be provided under those laws. And again, these facilities would not be a retail. You could not go up to them. You could not buy product from them. But they would be under the guise of the state law. You'd be permitting the licensee to do the testing. Again, it would be based on sort of the permissive zoning in the jurisdiction, so where you could do it and whether or not you would want to tax a facility like this. And we didn't talk about microbusinesses or distributors, but it's very similar to sort of the testing manufacturing. Where could you have those facilities? How would you allow that businesses, and how you might tax them? So again, in summary, the question is, where do people feel? Where are we going with this? What is the consensus on personal cultivation? Whether or not you want to regulate indoor growing, whether you want to regulate outdoor growing, allow it at all, prohibit it. Which cannabis licenses, if any, do people in the town want to allow? If you go back to that one slide, you can see that not many. There's only one community that has a storefront license, and again, that's a medicinal facility. The county is allowing for delivery licenses, and most other communities have a prohibition on storefront. Again, the state laws are changing, so we, Phil and I, will try to keep up to date on what those laws are so that we will be able to influence whatever the ordinance looks like, so that the Planning Commission and the Town Council has the most current information. And again, at some point, if at that point some licenses are approved or allowed, we'll need to talk about the taxation structure and how the town wants to incorporate taxation on top of the licensing fees. And this last slide here, I'm assuming people have a lot to say about something like this. If you can see, sort of the cannabis business, obviously there's a lot of pros and cons between allowing or prohibiting certain licenses. The cannabis business will say it's profitability, there's low crime, there's a legal standing, harmony with the neighborhood. Some of these storefronts won't be next to schools. And the community concerns obviously are, limiting children access and presence, the smell. What about crime? What about personal liberty and the retail presence? So there's a lot of pros and cons and a lot of concerns and issues. And that basically wraps up our sort of presentation. And we, at this point, will take your questions and we'll answers. I think what we'll do, because it seems like a lot of people do have questions, is we'll put the microphone over here at the podium, and you can come up and ask a question. We can answer it. Again, we do have a public survey. It's online. We encourage you all to go take the survey if you haven't already. Both Phil and I are available for access if you want to email us or call us if you have personal questions. And when you do come up to speak tonight, please limit your comments to 3 minutes, and hopefully we can have a conversation. Again, the workshop on Saturday is intended to be the same basic format. Obviously, Phil and I have gone through this once, so maybe we'll have a little bit more reform presentation, but you're welcome to come to that one as well. Please tell your neighbors and your friends if they have concerns to come as well. But with that, we'll end the presentation. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I think that is a, yes, great idea, and that was going to be my request, that if you could please, again, be considerate to everyone in the room, be considerate of each person's time, and like the gentleman suggested, please give your name and address if you're willing to. In the survey, we also ask for addresses. Again, we want to, this obviously is open to all, but this ordinance is going to affect the town of Corte Madera, so we want to be sure the citizens of Corte Madera's voices are heard along with others. So yeah, go ahead if you have a question or comment. Please step to the mic, and I'll set my timer.
I have a couple of comments, and the first is
Sorry, sir, would you be willing
I'm Chris in Corte Madera.
Great, thank you, Chris.
I would ask the town to take a fairly light regulatory touch, because I think that the police in the town have more important things to look at than marijuana stuff. And so that's a general observation, and I would also like to encourage the town to very lightly regulate personal cultivation, personal use, personal cultivation for personal use. And that's all I have to say at the present time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Jacques Yenny. I live at 300 Summit Drive in Corte Madera, and I've lived here for 42 years. I understand that cannabis is now legal, and I understand it has the medicinal capabilities that people can avail themselves to. But as far as having businesses operate here in Corte Madera and selling cannabis products, I think is a poor idea for very obvious reasons. And there's plenty of places to buy cannabis. And as far as cultivation, if you want to cultivate in your own yard, well, I certainly don't have any objection to that. But I think to have businesses operate here would be a very poor idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Bonnie. I'm a nurse, and I live here in Corte Madera. We live right over by Neil Cummins School, and I'm a nurse at Marin General Hospital, and I work per diem there. I'm just there a couple shifts a month. I've got 2 small kids here. They're 11 months apart, so I've got my hands full. So I kind of don't know why I'm here getting into this, but I'm very passionate about it, and coming from being a nurse and being in medicine and working in hospitals, in emergency rooms. I've worked at UCSF, that's where I started. I've been doing this almost 15 years. I've seen a lot of things done the wrong way, and I think cannabis can absolutely help. So I'm not really thinking of it from a business point of view, but more from a patient's perspective. I know personally there are hundreds of, more than that, patients at Marin General Hospital that rely on their medical marijuana, and when they get admitted, we cut them off from that. We don't let them have that. There's a physician named Larry Bedard who tried to get a program initiated at Marin General Hospital to allow medical marijuana patients to have access to their medicine while they're admitted, which I am a huge advocate for doing that. I mean, I think there's many avenues that we could go to put rules and restrictions on this. I asked earlier if anybody knows about the endocannabinoid system. It's part of your body, everybody's system, even mammals, everybody has this. And it's like locks, and phytocannabinoids, cannabis being them, are those keys to those locks. A lot of people don't know this. A lot of physicians don't know this. I'm a nurse, and I didn't know it until a couple years ago. I'll just finish for a little bit. But I understand. And, I have to say, just for the vibe in here, I understand it's really hard for you guys. You're in a tough spot. And, you don't know the medicine behind it. But and for people that have biases to it, I did too. So I sympathize with that. But having a nurse's background and, realizing the benefits that this could give not only to people, the earth, children, CBD therapy. I mean, we could go on and on. I just have to say I'm a nurse. I'm here. I am very passionate about cannabis and medicine. We've got a 30-year mortgage, and my husband's a fireman in the city, so we're not going anywhere. So I'm here, and if there's anything I can do or help to get us to where a lot of the world is, I would love to be a part of that. So that's all.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Emily Tajani. I am a resident of Corte Madera. I have kids here in Corte Madera. I'm also a physician, and I work here in Corte Madera. My specialty is in adolescent development and adolescent psychiatry, along with along with addiction medicine. I'm one of maybe 50 physicians across the United States with a specialty in adolescent addiction medicine. I teach at UCSF, and before living here, I trained and did research at Yale. I know that the purpose of a town hall meeting is, I think, mostly to solicit public opinion. I'm here, though, more to share evidence in the current state of knowledge about how not only marijuana and cannabis products, cannabinoids, of which there are hundreds, affect adults and teenagers and babies in utero, but also to talk about how having storefronts or advertisement or sale of marijuana products affect youth and adults, because there's actually a lot of research and evidence out there, and there's a lot of precedent for how these regulations affect teen use and teen health. And that research and evidence-based is not has nothing to do with passion or ideology. I mean, I love passion. I'm passionate about medicine. That's why I went to school for 13, 14 years. But I think we need to also, to sort of hear what the people in our town want, what the parents in our town are concerned about, and, think about the business interests as well. But I think we cannot overlook the vast amount of evidence that has nothing to do with opinion or ideology out there when making decisions about our town, especially when so much of the value of our town, I think, I'm fairly new here, has to do with this being a safe place to raise kids and to live. I'm well acquainted with the endocannabinoid system. There are actually many potentially therapeutic things to come down the pipeline from the cannabis plant. There is some evidence that there are antipsychotic and anti-anxiety components of certain types of cannabinoids, but not THC. THC, which is in most of the cannabis products being sold at dispensaries, even those that are not labeled as having THC, has a very different effect on health. And the problem is everything sold currently is not as advertised, unfortunately, because this is the first medication ever to be approved by public vote instead of by research and scientific understanding. So I could say a lot more about this, but I don't want to take up all of the time tonight, but I just want to make sure that the city, the town council, I don't know if I'm using the right term because I haven't really been involved in town hall meetings before, but knows that I'm here, I live here, and I'm an expert in this area, and I would be, enthused to be involved and help in whatever way might be appropriate and helpful.
Great. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bonnie Frank, and I am a resident of Corte Madera, going on about 30 years. I'm also a cancer survivor. I also own a farm, a medical farm up in Humboldt. And I'm about to actually meet with the state, which is why I keep asking about the state regs. State regs are pretty broad. And they're pretty extensive. As you saw, there were 5 agencies that cannabis, anybody doing any kind of cannabis business has to comply with. In a normal situation, in a normal setting, the state overrides local. And you may not prohibit a state legal product, but this isn't normal. This is crazy. So, I'm a cancer survivor because I'm part of Pine Street Clinic out of San Anselmo. We save people's lives. I do recognize that cannabis in the wrong hands, given to kids, is not good. And that there is a potential for addiction as well. Believe me, you're hypersensitive to it, especially in the medical profession. Because we're using medical marijuana to get people off opioids. And we're doing it successfully. We're also curing cancer. We're also curing cancer. Dirty little secret. We're also curing epilepsy. And it's not just CBD. It isn't. The science is goofy. You are trying to write rules and you don't even understand it. That's what's going on. We got people writing ordinances right now all over our state, locals, prohibiting it everywhere because people are really scared. And I get it. And it is scary. But the problem is we've been totally lied to. Because anybody in my business, in my world, because I'm only here because of cannabis. My sister's dead because she stopped smoking cannabis. This is the greatest lie. It is such propaganda. And we need to stop this. And we need to get this under control. But you telling us what regulations are going to be put into effect when you have no clue on what real regulations really already exist out there. And that there really is not a lot of reason to have to sit there and slop onto it more. It is the most overregulated, overtaxed area. There is absolutely no money in it for anybody that's in this business. People are dying left and right because they can no longer get their medical marijuana that they absolutely need, that they used to get charitably.
Thank you, Bonnie. If I can have you wrap up. Your 3 minutes are up. Thank you. You
need consultants to help you write any ordinance that will help in terms of I'm a commercial real estate attorney. I've been doing land use for 30 years. And I got to tell you, none of this collides. But you need help. And for you to dictate that to our community is not how democracy works.
Thank you for your comment.
So I would like to, I will. Excuse me, Phil. This is a free country. I don't have any seconds, lady. You want to get up and talk to me?
Okay.
Talk to me.
Thank you.
That's rude.
Please let the
Now,
next speaker
please,
speak.
I will close with one thing. There is a medical side of this. whether this country, whether everybody's in agreement on it or not. And there's research being done every day, thank God.
Okay, thank you. Let's have the next person
But
speak,
can
please.
we, I think you owe it to our community to hear our voices. So that means what I would like to see is a survey actually sent out to everybody in the community, asking these questions. And I know you're trying, and I applaud that. And then, yeah, I really do think a vote would be necessary
Thank you. We have our
because
next
most
speaker.
people won't get up and talk.
Thank you. We'd like the next person to get up and talk. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Linda, and I do not live in Corte Madera. I live in Kentfield, but I'm the project coordinator for the Coalition Connection, which works to reduce underage alcohol and drug use. I don't think you would have to be, not read the paper much to know that we have a crisis in Marin County with youth use of substances. We are 50% higher than the nation and 50% higher than the state of California. Accessibility, normalization, and perception of harm are the three biggest reasons our use is so high. As the doctor before me spoke, we have an addiction crisis. Youth are much more able to get addicted. The same reason they learn so quickly is why they become addicted. The normalization will only increase, and the perception of harm will decrease if we allow physical storefronts. I believe adults should have the right to do whatever they want, and access is not a problem, and I believe delivery should be available to anybody who wants it. I also believe that anybody with a medical condition that requires cannabis should have access to that fully and easily and readily. It should be affordable and easy to access. There's a lot of data and research out there. It's overwhelming, and it contradicts one another. We don't even have to look to Colorado and Washington to see what's happening, and there's a lot of damage being done in communities that have allowed retail storefronts. Look at Sonoma, Pacific. There's cities in California that have already allowed it that are seeing the harm to their community. I applaud Corte Madera for having a moratorium till next year so they can do the research and the due diligence that you need to do what's right for Corte Madera. I believe even though citizens voted for this, and they did, I don't know if they all voted for storefronts. I don't know if they voted for decriminalization, which I'm all for, or to remove the stigma of use. There's a lot, as we all know, it's a very complex, complicated topic. And I give you a lot of credit, and I feel for you, because to do what's right for Corte Madera is not easy, because as you can see, we have varying opinions, research, and data, and science, and sifting through public opinion and emotion complicates it even more. So I urge you, for the sake of our youth, to do what's right for them. They're already facing unparalleled problems. They have a mental health, suicide. The crisis in this county it's huge. I was at an opioid and fentanyl talk earlier today at Dominican University. It's just overwhelming what's happening and the deaths that we're seeing. And I don't want to over exaggerate and link deaths to cannabis. But again, I just urge you to look at what's right for Corte Madera and the youth of Corte Madera. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cece. I've been in Corte Madera for about 30 years. Raised 3 kids here, and we have a business here. I am an advocate of marijuana. It's been in my system all my life, I think. I came from San Francisco in the, flower child years. I think, my attitude, if you have a liquor store that has liquor in it, I don't drink really very much, but, kids can go in there and steal the liquor. I think I'm an advocate for a storefront. I've been in many of them in San Francisco and in Colorado. I'm an advocate for using our warehouse areas to house and manufacture if somebody wants to go there. I don't know why they'd want to. But I think we should have an open door. As far as addictions, yeah, it happens, and kids, most of the kids get the stuff from their parents first before they, we have an issue with children having so much in Marin. I don't see this as an issue. As far as Pine Street Clinic, my husband is a cancer survivor. He was recommended to, I made him smoothies out of marijuana. He was at Kaiser. They were amazed that he did not have to take any opiates for his cancer. He only took this marijuana that I made him in these smoothies, and had no issues with his colon cancer until, way at the end where they ended up doing a little surgery and got an infection. But before that, he made it through, without opiates from cancer treatment. So we all advocates, and I think we should make it as easy. Harvest is also in San Francisco, right at, Park Presidio and 19th Avenue. You drive by there as you're going to the, airport. There's no issues. Anyway, that's it.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak?
Hi, my name's Carl Spurzum. I live on Lakeside Drive in Corte Madera. Phil and Sean, thanks for your efforts tonight. And we'll wait for the next one, too. I just had a few things. I'm just going to kind of fast forward and assume we sort of get to a decision where, yes, we might have a storefront. Yes, we might have testing and variety of things. So to me, it kind of boils down to two things, taxes. How are you going to tax it? How much are you going to tax it? And where are you going to put it? Because Corte Madera doesn't have a lot of open land. I think someone mentioned, you can do it on Paradise Drive. Anyway, those are the two things I will look to, be spending time on. Taxation's been really high, which isn't great because everyone's trying to feed off this new law. So I think, it's killing it. Taxes in Colorado, I think, are close to 25%. To walk out the door with something. Some are as high as 50%. It's kind of nuts. So anyway, taxes are something that I think should spend some time on. Testing, I don't really see a problem with that. I'm not sure why, but again, where would you put it? And the other side of it is just from the general acceptance of cannabinoids, CBDs. My father's 92 and a surgeon, and he recommended them to my wife to get. And you can buy cannabinoids with no THC in them, so they actually can be mailed and all that stuff because they don't fall under the law. So there are some things that I think will impact positively folks in their later years to be able to have access and not have to do deliveries and everything else. So in any event, so those are the things I'm thinking about. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Matt Mahaley. I'm a resident of Corte Madera. I just wanted to push back a little bit against the kind of unspoken and sometimes spoken assumption I've heard that there's a risk to having cannabis businesses near schools. I don't have a horse in this game. I don't operate a dispensary. I don't operate a farm. But I was actually Googling before I came to this meeting tonight, and there's a study in 2018 by University of San Diego researchers. They surveyed about 46,000 students in 8th grade, 10th grade, and 12th grade in 117 different schools, and they found literally no correlation whatsoever between increased cannabis use and proximity of dispensaries to schools. So I just want to, I understand why the gut reaction is to feel like, oh, we obviously need to move these away from schools, but without actual evidence, telling us that there is real harm being done, that's just a needless regulation from my point of view. And so I'd like to see regulations proceed, based on science, not on kind of gut emotional biases. That's all.
Thank you.
Is it allowed to make a very brief second comment?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I got a little nervous and left. I didn't realize I didn't speak to one thing I really wanted to mention, which is, the part. Do you want me to say my name again? Emily Tajani, resident and physician in Corte Madera. The American Academy of Pediatrics opposes medical and recreational marijuana because of the known harms to youth and Infant Development. The American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry opposes medical and recreational marijuana because of those same reasons. It's, it's complicated, and there's a lot of angles to consider. There is likely some benefit to the opioid epidemic and reducing that, allowing adults with pain to have access to marijuana. There is evidence for that, and I think that's a wonderful thing. There's also a lot of really good evidence showing that increased advertisement or accessibility to marijuana decreases the age at first cannabis use for youth, meaning they're more likely to use at a younger age, and they're more likely to positively to have positive associations with marijuana use, and are more likely to develop a cannabis use disorder. So far, we are so early on in these changes, these legislative changes, that it's too early to have really well done studies that show the outcome of changes in legislation on adolescent use patterns. There are really well known and well understood effects on brain development when teens use cannabis. The fact that we have an endocannabinoid system means that if we use a cannabinoid, it affects our brain, especially when our brain is developing. It's much less of an issue and concern for adults based on what we know so far, but for anyone between the age of in utero to about age 24, there are real changes structurally in the brain that we can see. And there's lots of, there's no way to have a storefront and limit youth use. What we've seen so far doesn't show that. We are starting to see the beginning of an increase in adolescent use across the country. States like Washington have shown a doubling in cannabis use and cannabis use disorder amongst youth over the past couple years since they made their changes, increasing accessibility and legalization of marijuana. In Colorado, it's so far stayed about the same in the thinking there. And again, this isn't totally clear yet. Time will tell more. But it's a big experiment for our youth to make such drastic changes. In Colorado, the prevalence of youth use has stayed about the same. The thinking there is that there was probably such widespread acceptance already in that state that we haven't yet been able to see the change, but I think we will likely see a change in the coming years. And then the last thing I want to say is that cannabis use disorder cannabis use at all in the teen years more than doubles the risk of becoming addicted to cannabis later in life. And if you wait until you're an adult to start using, you're much less likely to get addicted. So I really am concerned about teens having more access. So I'll stop. But I just wanted to make sure I gave that information.
Thank you. Can I have the next speaker, please?
Is unbelievable.
Well then, don't believe it.
I don't believe it.
Next speaker, please. Thank you.
My name is Karen Gerbosi. I live in Corte Madera.
Really, where?
Google it. You'll find me. In general terms, I urge the Planning Commission and the Town Council to be as conservative as is prudent. I think that we should be as aggressive as possible with regard to compliance. If we establish dispensaries, that the dispensaries are selling products that comply with all testing criteria. Because I just recently, in the last 24 hours, saw an article about how a lot of material is out there that's not passing the testing criteria. Now, maybe it's a learning curve. I don't know. It's not my area of expertise. And I appreciate that this evening, even though there are people here with whom I do not agree, that by and large who has come out is the people from Corte Madera. Because I have been to, back in whenever it was, 1996, probably, yeah, it was 1996, and when we when we started having town council informational meetings about dispensaries, that who would show up is people from Monterey to Ukiah. So I appreciate that in this particular evening, who has showed up is the people that live here and who really have a dog in the hunt. I think that there's a lot of people that aren't here, that aren't aware of it, but I can't speak for them. The one other thing that I wanted to mention is that I live in a homeowners association, and I want to be sure that whatever regulations are put into effect don't preclude homeowners associations from having a higher bar, and if they wish to choose to adhere to federal regulations, that they can, and that the state doesn't mandate that they can't go there. Do you have anything else you want to say?
Thank you. You can please address us. Thank you.
No, I'm sorry. Let me just look at my notes. That concludes my comments. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I'm Lucinda Smith, and I have been a resident of Corte Madera for 50 years, so I'm a longtime resident. Have seen a lot of changes. I would hate to see some of the things that have been discussed tonight as far as relating to the cannabis and the sales, dispensing, transportation, et cetera, implemented for our little town of Corte Madera. I think when the proposition was passed, not all the information got out to the voters, and the voters that were really interested in authorizing or legalizing marijuana are the ones that showed up to the polls to vote on it. I think that money for the towns has been a true factor. They look at this as being a real money generator, and I think what's been proven by some of the towns and the research that's been done or the studies that have been done, that it's not showing the production of revenues that were promised. I think Colorado, there's a site on the online that talks about this study. It was in Colorado, and they had the revenue tax from the medical and recreational marijuana was equal to 0.8% of the overall state tax budget. So it's not very much, and it's not coming through as being the generator of money that everybody thought it was going to be, so it doesn't have the appeal there. I think what some of the medical people have brought up, medical marijuana I guess, has some value to some people, but I think that it is misused. I think it's been proven, and it's very difficult for our law enforcement to take any action. Some of the rules that they have to follow include the fact that it's a misdemeanor for someone under 18 to be caught in possession. And it's basically a slap on the hand, and that's about it. So I don't think that there's proper deterrence from this kind of thing. There is a video on the online that's called The Chronic State. It was put on by the state of Idaho. It's about 56 minutes in its length. And it's an online documentary about how Colorado is doing since legalization was permitted there. I think that's something that the town needs to understand, and I would hope that it would be one of the links that you would include in that list of links so people who are interested in finding out about it a little bit more would have a direct contact that they could go to. I think the chronic or the additional law breaking and robberies and burglaries that are coming into play are something we need to consider. We need our law enforcement to be out there protecting us from other things than to try and deal with some of the burglars that come from other areas to our state. And because now it's legal here, they can buy it here, take it back to their state, and sell it for 20 times the amount that they would get otherwise. And I am out of time, so I'm sorry I can't say more.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Liz. I grew up in Corte Madera, but I'm no longer here. So I just want to make legally, I don't have to give my information. Just FYI. If you don't believe me, you can look it up. But my name is Liz, and I'm in Corte Madera. So as we're discussing this topic tonight, everything in life, there's always a pro and con, like for and against it. And I think as adults, we should give each other more respect when we're speaking and be less immature. Because, so I want to say that I have a lot of friends who were in the marijuana black market, and I know a lot of people. Personally, I don't do any of those things. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do drugs. But I know a lot of people in the marijuana black market, and they've made millions until things were legalized. So now they're hurting. So I used to be against marijuana. I didn't want it legalized. But now seeing that things are legalized, it's killing the black market. So, which is good because, you know, anything in the black market, I believe it's bad. So, but with that point, I just want to say that, you know, if you want to control it, legalize it. So that's my belief right now. And as far as what the doctor said about youth, we're marketing this to 21 or 18 years of older. They're an adult. They can do whatever they want with their body and their brain. But, you know, we're not marketing this to, like a storefront, we're not marketing this to the youth. So if you have a problem with the youth using it, you should look into the parents to discipline the kids, not blame it on the legal system or the storefront. And, you know, being in Marin all my life, I know there's a lot of privileged kids there, and they have a lot of resources, especially, you know, given with what their parents give them. And if kids here, I believe, if they want to get their hands on something, they'll get their hands on it, whether or not there's a storefront or not. And I believe that having a storefront is good because it's a business. It brings in a lot of revenue, and if you postpone it until next year, you're missing out on a lot of tax revenue. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ralph Hoffman. I live on Chapman. I've been there for about 30 years. And I'm in the medical field, but I'm not an expert on marijuana. I'm a personal user. I believe that it has done a lot of good for a lot of people, cancer survivors and otherwise. All things have the potential for abuse, and I think that we're not really talking about that now. At least that shouldn't be part of the discussion, all right? Marijuana has been considered to be allowed to be used. It can be used safely. It can be kept away from kids. It doesn't mean that having a place to sell marijuana in town is going to make it so that the youth is going to be polluted with marijuana. I just don't see how that follows. So personally, I would not do anything to disallow marijuana dispensaries in Marin County, but I would think logic would say they have to be discreet because kids are susceptible to advertising, and that isn't really what we want. So my own personal feeling is you can have it, but it should be discreet. People should be allowed to use it in their house. They shouldn't be allowed to use it necessarily in public, but it's the same thing with alcohol too, or at least it should be.
Thank you.
My name's Kim Pelham. I don't live in Corte Madera. I live in Napa, but I do have a unique perspective on this because I had a dispensary here in Corte Madera for nearly 2 years. So I'm also a mother. I'm a mother proudly of a 32-year-old daughter and a 30-year-old daughter. Neither of them are prostitutes. Neither of them have done drugs. They don't even smoke marijuana, which is surprising, I'm sure, to most of you, since I ran a dispensary for many years. I use it myself for medical use. I've had extreme complicated migraines since I was 10 years old. I've done the Imitrex, which is now. I started on phenobarbital when I was 10 years old. I don't know if you know what phenobarbital is, but anybody with a medical degree would understand what that does to a 10-year-old. So I don't even drink wine. I'm one of those few people, especially most people in Marin do drink wine, and I don't even do that. I live in Napa, so I don't drink wine in Napa either. And in my experience as a parent of adult daughters who are very functional, both of them, I proudly went to college, both of them have careers, one of them's married, had my first grandson a year ago, which almost makes me cry because his birthday's next week. So, but anyway, in my experience with teenagers and children, where they get their drugs is usually in your medicine cabinet while you're at a meeting at 7:30 at night. They're getting their wine from your cabinet while you're at the same meeting or while you're doing something at school. And they're smoking marijuana because you're smoking marijuana in front of them at their home. And that's where they learn it. And the first marijuana that my brother my brother smokes marijuana and has since he was 10 years old. He took it from my mother's cabinet because my mom was one of those hippie growing up. And my mom's okay with that. And my brother's fine smoking marijuana every day. Some people drink, some people smoke marijuana. He's an architect. He does it to unwind when he gets home. So I don't really judge that either way any more than I do somebody who has a glass of wine. I think what you'd be surprised in me being at a medical dispensary for 2 years every single day, and I invited, at the moment, the current council that was here, as well as Todd Comissimo, who was the Twin Cities at that point police chief, came into my place on a regular basis. I was very discreet. Most people didn't know I was there, and I would have been heavily regulated, but for the fact that when it hit the paper, everybody in Corte Madera decided that I was there. Nobody even knew because we were very discreet. So then it became an issue of a NIMBY thing where nobody wanted us there because we were going to pollute their children. However, we'd been there for 2 years with no complaints from the police department, no complaints from the neighbors, no complaints from the city, and had been quietly working and paying out of our own pocket to craft an ordinance which was very reasonable. We got closed down because of that, because then all of a sudden it was going to ruin everybody's children, which I found very amusing, since in the 2 years we were there, it didn't seem to do that. So that is my perspective, and I think you'd be surprised being there. I know this is more voicing like medical as opposed to recreational, as opposed to medical. I was there for medical reasons. But my feeling is you would be shocked at the people who come in there, because it's your doctors, it's your lawyers, it's your neighbors. Everybody, I saw everybody. People would come in there, everybody from school teachers to everybody came in. And everybody has their own personal thing that they do to deal with pain, to deal with cancer. I used medical marijuana for my dog when he was suffering from cancer. I did it because one of my cancer patients who came into my shop when I was bringing my dog in while Joey was going through chemotherapy suggested it, and it was very helpful to him. I've used it myself for my migraines, and it was helpful. But what you do know is that it's already in your community. And the sad part is when somebody who is a professional, and this is more of an affluent neighborhood, has to go into a neighborhood in San Francisco or Oakland that they wouldn't normally have to go into to purchase marijuana. They thanked me on a daily basis, particularly when it's for medical use. It makes it a lot harder for people to access. And I know somebody came up here and said, oh, you can get it anywhere. No, you can't. You can get it in Colfax right now, Fairfax. That's the only place that you can get it in the entire county, is to drive all the way out to Fairfax. And that might not seem cumbersome to certain people, but if the only place that you could get your wine or the only place that you could get your medication was to drive all the way out to Fairfax to do it, then it would be a bigger issue for everybody else, not just for those small amount of people. So that's my opinion. Thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Lisa. I'm no longer a resident of Corte Madera. I live in Larkspur now. I have a couple things to say, and some of this is very personal. It hurts when I hear people deriding each other in a community meeting like this. I don't think it's useful. I don't think it's productive. I think it's disrespectful. And I would encourage all of us to listen with open, respectful ears and to speak with respectful tongues. It just makes the world work better. So that's the first thing. As a kid, my parents took it on themselves to teach me how to drink at home, teach me how to drink. In my mind, my entire family is alcoholic. I don't know how I missed that bug. Somehow I did. The saddest part is, well, my brother's the only one that's in recovery, and he's got 30 plus years under his belt. He lost his only son to an alcohol-related drowning. This was about 5 or 6 years ago. Alcohol is a dangerous substance. Alcohol is addictive. I don't know how much we really truly know about the addictiveness of marijuana. I think I'll leave that to the medical community and the experts to determine. And I just really implore people who want to speak less than respectfully to speak respectfully. You'll be listened to with better ears, and this whole thing will go a whole lot more smoothly. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Sarah. I've been here 60 years. Seen a whole lot of
Wait, wait.
changes in
Sorry.
Corte Madera.
We didn't
and-
hear you. Go ahead and start.
Oh, I'm Sarah.
Sarah?
60 years here. I used to be totally against cannabis. I changed my mind when I saw what it's done for a lot of people that I know who are in a lot of trouble. And with cancer, all sorts of different things, diabetes, neuropathy, and I've seen amazing things happen with this. I'm a really terrible public speaker, sorry. But anyway, I mean, my own brother I turned on because of cannabis, and I really flipped completely, and I think so many people voted for this, and yet everybody says, put it over there, don't, not here. We don't want it in our town, but we want to use it. I mean, that sucks. I mean, I find that really hard to believe, that people were doing what they thought was right, and maybe they voted for, unfortunately, big business to come in with pot, but it's just, I think it's really disgusting that everybody's like, well, just bring it in delivery. Well, you're still using it. If you're gonna use it, why does it have to be someplace else? Why do you have to go to Oakland, to Berkeley, to Richmond? Why can't somebody here just say, okay, we're gonna use it, we're using it, millions of people use it here in Marin, so, why is it like such a horrid thing, and why can't we just say, yeah, we're really friendly to that? I mean, you don't have to go out and, publicize it to all the kids or whatever. And she's right, kids are gonna get it wherever. And especially in Marin, everybody's got so much money and they get whatever they want. But I just don't think this is right, that we're always shoving it into somebody else's neighborhood. Why does it have to be Fairfax? Why do they have to take the hit for everybody coming in and destroying their town, which isn't happening? So I think we need to be a little bit more open about this, and Corte Madera has always been a friendly place. We take care of our people, and I think we can stand up to this. I mean, if somebody wants a storefront, let them have a storefront. They're not gonna probably have neon signs, it's just, let them sell this. I mean, people have the right to decide what they want and what's gonna hurt them, and it's their body, and, let them have a fighting chance at some of the stuff that's hurting them. And, I mean, I have a lab that analyzes cannabis, and I think that, as long as it's safe and there's nothing in it like mold or pesticides that's gonna hurt you, I think everybody should have a shot at this. And there's so many things that this will fix. And even just anxiety and depression, things that everybody's going through, especially in Marin. I think people need to use this and try it. You don't have to get high. I've used this, I don't get high, I can't stand that. But there's a whole other range of cannabinoids that will not make you high, but will make you feel better. And I've had pain issues my whole life. I lived on opiates for 30 years, and I've finally been able to back that off by using CBD. So I just, I think there's a lot of benefit here, and I'd like to see people actually try it and have access to it, and that we are, not one of these ashamed neighborhoods that's we're gonna, let it be in somebody else's house. So that's what it is.
Thank you. Let's make sure that all first timers have gone.
we've decided in the state.
Would you
that-
like to give your name and
Oh, I'm
address?
sorry. I'm Deanna. I'm from Larkspur.
Thank you.
That cannabis is legal, more than medicinal, but also recreational. I think if it's tested and it's controlled and it's taxed, it will be much safer for everyone. You'll know where to get it if you need it, and if you need it, you're going to get it somewhere. I mean, I'm not talking about people or children who will become addicted. I'm talking about people who need it for health reasons. You're going to find a way to get it. It might as well be tested, reliable. You know where it comes from. You know where it's been grown. And it's available to you easily, so you don't have to drive a long way. And delivery is fine, but sometimes people have a particular type of cannabinoid that works for them. And if you have access to that, you want to hold on to that access, and you want it to be reliable. So if you can have a dispensary, I'm sure that it will look just like one of the shops at the town center. There will be no marijuana in the window or posters, or it will be done very well. That's what people in the cannabis business want to do it right. They want to do it right. And so if you will allow it, I think it would be fantastic.
Thank you. Okay, 15.
Yeah, I
Okay.
was just going to say I didn't use my 3 minutes. So what I didn't say, which I wasn't really willing to, but I am willing to say now, is I'm trained as a psychotherapist. I work down at Community Action Marin. I work with a lot of people who have very, very severe diagnoses, psychosis, schizophrenia, etc. I don't call myself a therapist. I am not licensed. So I went through all the training. I didn't get licensed for my own personal reasons. I deal with a lot of people with dual diagnosis, which means that they have addictions plus psychosis or mental illness. That population is not a population I ever dreamt I would be working with. I was really nervous about it, and I only just started doing that pretty recently. I see that marijuana or cannabis is used a lot in the mental health community for pain, for anxiety, for sleep disorders, et cetera, et cetera. It's very effective. I think if it were to be controlled and used responsibly, which it would be alcohol is not particularly regulated. We have a lot more problems with alcohol than with marijuana. I just think that I want to put a plug in for responsible investigation and usefulness of it. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, a lot of great comments. I appreciate everybody's input. Again, feel free to, if there aren't any other comments or questions, please give your, yes, sir. You go ahead.
Any kind of consensus?
No, and we didn't expect to. Our goal was not consensus because this is a very small group compared to the population of Corte Madera. So it's this is just the beginning of the process.
I just want to flag that Saturday's the 15th, not the 16th, in case you guys didn't realize that.
Whoops, thank you. Yeah, I think the flyers. Thank you for that. All right, well, thank you again for all coming out, and tell your friends and neighbors about Saturday, and have them contact me because I'll know how many chairs to get. It will be physically held here at. Okay. Okay. Thank
And I just wanted to also thank everybody for coming out. It really was a nice turnout to see so many Corte Madera residents speak about this. What's that? I know, it's all right. And I know it's hard for, a lot of this is personal. I do think we got to a lot of good comments on, obviously some of this is going to be more in the land use regulatory environment and where these things can go or if they should go in terms of a physical location. Whereas I know there's a larger conversation that we also were hearing tonight about the benefits of medical use versus non-medical use. I think one of the things we're going to have to decide, and ultimately the town council will have to decide, is more from a physical location and are those businesses ultimately going to be licensed in town physically? So we heard a lot of great comments about that. I'm not saying we didn't. I just want to make a plug for focusing on that as well as we move forward in this process. I'm sorry. Adam Wolf, I'm the Planning and Building Director with the Town of Corte Madera. And I'm using.
Thank you, Adam. And feel free to stay if you have questions. We can talk offline. Yeah, my cards are in the back there. Thank you again.